Hello, my Bill 1000 Nation. How's everyone doing today? Hopefully, everyone's having a great day. If not, I hope it gets better from here. We are back with another That Chapter. This one is titled Evil Psychopath Prison Escape Shocks a Country. Robert Mone. That was a mouthful. That's what she said. Sorry. Before we get started in today's video, if any of y'all have watched this channel before, my little intro video has changed. The B5N that you see in that, be on the lookout for that. That's going to be my logo thing. So instead of seeing this beautiful face the way you have been, I'm sorry I got so loud. I get excited, people. Instead of seeing this beautiful face, you're going to see that. That is my beautiful face now. Yeah. All right. Now that that's aside, go ahead, turn them lights down low, put on something comfy, cuddle up with something special. Let's get shocked. Yeah. I don't know. Let's make this bigger before I forget. Halfway through it, I end up doing it. Grr.
Hey you, and welcome. My name is Mike, and in this old video, well, Robert Mone is probably one of the most insane and dangerous people alive. Top 10, at least, in the UK. This story takes us to Scotland, to the year 1967 when things got dark. I'm talking pitch black. It's a story that begins with Robert Mone walking into a school with a very large brown paper package, and then years later, it's a story of like son, like father. Before we begin, please subscribe to see new stories for the dark.
Like son, like father. Oh God, is it a family of murderers?
Every single week. Now, let's give it a go. On November 1st, 1967, and it was a very dark and cold winter's morning. Then 19-year-old Private Robert Francis Mone, whose mind was either going a million miles a minute or was completely blank. He was wearing his British Army uniform and carrying a large brown paper package under his arm, and he was walking into a school. He walked out of the cold, out of the rain, into a girls' classroom in St. John's High School, Dundee, Scotland. Robert himself had attended that school prior to joining the army, but he was expelled in 1964, and his expelling seems to have been the catalyst for what would set off the events of that day. Quite simply, cold, dark revenge. In the classroom that day were 11 girls, all aged between 14 and 15 years old, as well as their teacher, 26-year-old Nanette Hansen, who was pregnant with her first child at that time.
Well, shit. She's gonna die. We already know. We've all watched. Yep.
Robert Mone was considered AWOL from the army for the past couple of days. A couple of days he had spent drinking himself into oblivion, constant blackouts, one bottle after another after another. Robert would put his desertion from the British Army down to being shunned and being ignored by other soldiers. See, Robert, against his own judgment, had been persuaded to testify against 2 officers. An act which, of course, branded him a rat. So, that very stormy and dark morning, Robert, he walked briskly into the classroom and he ordered 2 of the girls to start stacking furniture and desks against the classroom door so nobody could come in. Not long after, he opened that brown paper package he'd been carrying under his arm, revealing a double-barreled shotgun. Then, the headmaster of the school, a couple of other teachers and students who had heard like this ruckus and this shouting and this roaring coming from the classroom, they began to gather outside but were unable to get in because Robert had barricaded the door.
Damn.
Hearing they were outside, Robert started opening up the shotgun at the door. After they had retreated, it was up to Nanette Hansen to try and figure out what the heck to do to try and calm down a madman waving a shotgun around. Nanette actually showed no fear in approaching Robert and managed to calm him down enough to get his demands. His demands? was 18-year-old student nurse Marion Young, who worked in the same school. Now, Robert and Marion, Robert 19, Marion 18, they must have had some kind of relationship. Maybe they were childhood sweethearts, right? Nope. The police who had begun surrounding the school were pretty shocked to find out that they barely knew each other. They had met once months before, had very, very little contact, but apparently that very, very little contact was enough for Robert to become
that magic moment.
Infatuated with her to the point where he was having a hostage situation and wanted her brought in. He was going to take advantage of this momentary spell of power that was given to him by a shotgun. And then seeing the police surrounding the school outside, he began firing shots out the windows.
Wow.
Marion Young was there, and she volunteered to go into the classroom to at least try and attempt to calm Robert down and see if, they could de-escalate this entire situation. Now, I'm not exactly sure why the police kind of were in you get, but I think it was because Marion was a nurse, so in case there was anybody inside the classroom, any of the kids or the teacher herself were injured, she could go in there and give them medical care.
Yeah.
Now, unfortunately, people inside the classroom already did need medical care. While Robert was waiting for Marion to come in, he assaulted two of the students in the back of the classroom. In the classroom, Robert, he was pretty chuffed. He was feeling like the big man, waving the shotgun around, telling people what to do. He was in charge, and he liked it. Once Marion, though, arrived, she joined Nanette in trying to calm Robert down, saying, it's not too late. You haven't, seriously hurt anybody. You haven't killed anybody yet. And stunning to everybody involved, Nanette and Marion were actually successful.
Keyword, though, yet. Yet only gets you so far. Only things left is opportunity. He's already got the means. He don't care.
In their attempts to get Robert to de-escalate the situation, he would eventually let all of the students in the classroom go. He would let them walk out. Once the girls were gone, though, Marion and Nanette then turned their attention to Robert himself, trying to get him to put down the loaded...
Well, at least you let all the kids go, right? Are they kids? They say girls. I mean, they're kids. I'm old.
Weapon he had. They thought Robert was listening. I mean, he agreed to let the students go, and he's calming down. Put the shotgun down. Just as the women thought Robert was starting to finally see sense, he ordered Nanette, the teacher, to close the blinds of the classroom. And when she had turned around, he shot her in the back with the shotgun. Marion sprinted over to Nanette to try and desperately save her life. She begged Robert, to let her go so she could get some proper medical care. Robert replied simply, sitting down in the teacher's chair, "Do what you want." Marion then fled the classroom only to try and save Nanette's life. But in the meantime, the police stormed in. They surrounded Robert as he was sitting at the desk. He was sitting at the desk with his big shit-eating grin on his face. He was having a grand time. Robert Mone was arrested without further incident. But unfortunately, 26-year-old mother-to-be Nanette Hansen, neither her nor the baby would make it.
Damn, I knew it. I told you.
In 1968, a year...
I'm from the future. I know things. Shh, don't tell nobody.
After the horrific events at St. John's, Robert was ruled to be unfit to enter a plea at trial due to him being severely schizophrenic.
Wow.
Later, Robert would say, yeah, got away with that when he conned everybody. Sure, he was totally, in control of his own actions, but he just, wanted an easier sentence. I mean, looking though what he did in that classroom, he was declared to be legally insane and was remanded into custody at a secure mental ward.
Fuck.
Still a prison, though with even more oversight over the patients. It also comes with an indefinite sentence, which is, no time frame for parole eligibility, so...
Really?
I mean, I suppose, is it better in prison? No, so this is usually the part where I'd be, finishing off the story, telling you how much I love you. But no, this old one is far from done.
No, you don't love us, man. Oh, no, the story's not over. Oh, this day was about to get bad.
Instead of rotting away in a padded cell, far from being able to hurt anyone ever again like a good boy, In 1970, 3 years after his incarceration, Robert met another inmate named Thomas McCullough.
Okay.
Thomas was just as bad as Robert, if not worse, and had been branded a, quote, incurable psychopath. It turns out Thomas himself, he had been shook into the secure unit after he got into a bit of a dispute with a hotel chef. And when I dispute, I mean Thomas shot him and killed him. And the dispute was over not being given enough butter for his bread roll, because he just loves a bit of butter. Apparently he wouldn't give him any more butter, so...
I mean, I like butter on my bread. No matter how I say it, it's going to come out fucked up. So I'm going to say it the original way. I love putting a lot of butter on my buns. See? It sounded weird. I heard it before I said it. It's fine. It's fine. It is. We're rolling with it. I like a lot of butter. I don't think I would want to kill someone because I didn't get enough of it. I just asked the person next to me if they was going to eat their butter.
Thomas pulled out a shooter, shot him in the face, killing him, and then wounded a waitress. Unsurprisingly, Thomas...
What the fuck did the waitress do? Was it because she wouldn't get him the butter either? Man really likes his butter. He likes that country cock. Almost a country cock. Oh, I'm going home. I'm done. I don't know what's wrong with my face and mouth and tongue today, but they're working against me.
Was found to be insane. After they met in the secure mental ward, Robert and Thomas would go on to become fast friends, and also, apparently, lovers. Over the next few years, though, things went...
Crazy fell in love with crazy. Crazy bitch.
Went quiet and routine kicked in, but little did anybody know, Robert and Thomas were planning something. You see, during his time in a hospital, Robert had constantly been complaining that conditions, frankly, lads, they're just not good enough. I won't put up with this. I'm not putting up with this at all. When his demands for improvements weren't met, Robert and Thomas said, listen, we're out 5,000. So the two men bided their time until they found...
It's a nice place to visit, but I ain't living here. It's time to pack our shit and go. What the? The landlord just ain't doing nothing.
The right moment to strike. That right moment to strike was on the evening of the 30th of November, 1976, when Robert and Thomas kicked off 3 hours of chaotic violence by attacking a nurse and fellow prisoner in the secure hospital's social room area. In that room at the time was nursing officer Neil McClellan and another patient, Ian Simpson. Robert sprayed paint thinner into the hospital worker's eyes and then began stabbing him with a pitchfork till he hit the deck. The plan had been to incapacitate the nurse long enough here to steal his keys and so make their escape. So while Robert was doing this, attacking the nurse, Thomas had grabbed an axe from the garden shed and began hacking at another prisoner in the mental ward. He would go buck wild on the only other witness. Once Thomas and Robert had subdued the 2 people in the hospital's social room, Thomas pushed Robert out the door and said, keep a lookout. Then Thomas, about to follow him outside, did the... One more thing. You know, in the same manner you might when you're about to leave your house and you forget your wallet, he took up the axe again, went over to the 2 men lying defenseless on the floor, butchered them with the axe. The 2 men managed to scale a wall using a rope ladder they had fashioned in the weeks leading up to...
So they murdered everyone. Spider-Man their way out of this motherfucker? That's a whole other kind of crazy, bro. Damn.
To the escape. Even climbing through barbed wire to flee captivity and the hospital grounds. Now this was in a pretty remote area, so to get away, they would need a car. But they had already thought of this. Over the wall and running for the nearest road, they set a trap. Robert was lying down on the middle of the road pretending he was injured, while Thomas, wearing a nurse's uniform he had stolen with a fake beard, even was hiding nearby. 2 cars drove...
Where did he get the fake beard? I really need to know. Seriously, like, did this crazy ass hospital for these crazy ass people have like a theater section there? And he was like, "Hey, you remember when we did that production of Fiddler on the Roof? I'm gonna go get me one of them beards."
Drove by. The first was a civilian
Okay.
car, and that just not my problem. The second car to drive by was a police officer's car, which immediately pulled over, seeing this man injured lying on the road, and two cops got out. One of the officers immediately ran over to Robert to see what the hell was going on and if he was okay. At which point Robert grabbed him and began attacking him, while Thomas, who was hiding behind, jumped down top of the other officer. Thomas, with that axe, began hacking at one of the officers, while Robert whipped out a cleaver and began slicing at the other. One of the
Where was the key? Where what? Did he have that cleaver keistered? Was it in his prison wallet? What is the movie Kevin Hart and Will Ferrell get hard? I don't know why. Yeah.
officers, Constable George Taylor, was brutally murdered
Oh
there
shit.
on the spot. His head caved in by Thomas McCullough. The other would survive, but with like life-threatening injuries. And amazingly, the alarm at the hospital hadn't even been raised yet. No one was aware they had made a break for it. Two men lay dead inside, another one lay dead outside, and another dying. And Robert and Thomas got into the police car and began booking it.
What kind of shitty hospital is this? No, I wouldn't want to stay there either. You got 3 people dead and 1 dying. You know that's not quiet in any way, shape, or form. He's probably sitting there going, how you not gonna know? How you not gonna know? That's fucking stupid.
Emptying the gas tank as they sped away. However, this being in November, the roads were icy and neither of them had driven a car in a long time. Dumbasses quickly crashed the fucking thing. But then, a van driving in the opposite direction saw this crashed police car. The van pulled over, 2 men got out to see if they could help out. Thomas then decided to be a police officer, escorting his prisoner, Robert. And then, once again, as soon as they felt like they were in an advantageous position, they just jumped on top of the 2 men who had been in the van, launching just a frenzied attack until they were incapacitated, and then they threw the 2 men into the back of the van, while Robert and Thomas got in the front of the van, once again driving away.
What the fuck?
However, after driving a short while, Thomas became incredibly paranoid. He assumed, that they would be discovered, that the alarm had been raised back at the hospital. Pro tip, it hadn't been yet. And so he turned the van to drive off-road through the grass and the fields, where it eventually became bogged down and stuck in the mud. And so, once again, they had to abandon their escape vehicle. They left the hostages inside. They were both critically injured, but would survive. And their escapees took off on foot across the fields. They set off for the nearest building, which was an occupied farmhouse, breaking in the door and terrorizing the family who were inside. Eventually, Thomas demanded, "Give me your keys." They quickly did, as you would, and they set off on their third escape vehicle. By this time, though, the bodies back at the hospital had been discovered, and so police in southern Scotland and in northern England were put on high alert and began booking it towards this general area. It had only been 3 hours, but those 3 hours were absolutely insane. Eventually,
it had only been 3 hours that these 2 deranged, crazed, psychopathic killers has escaped and has already killed. Well, no. They've only killed the one since they've left. Everyone else is still somewhat alive. Not well, and at the time you guys don't know this, I get it, but we're from the future. So don't worry about how we know. We just know. You know how much shit they've done in 3 hours? You know how far away I can be in 3 hours from wherever I started? Pretty fucking far.
the police spotted the vehicle Thomas and Robert had stolen. racing down the road, and so the police cars, there was like a minor police chase, with eventually them ramming, boxing it in, and pushing it off the road. Despite what must have been a jarring crash, Robert and Thomas immediately fled the wrecked getaway car, but were intercepted by several officers. What followed was a ferocious fight between the unarmed officers and the tooled-up criminals. In the end, though, the persistence of the police officers won out. They managed to subdue both Robert and Thomas. Even when they were cuffed, lying on the ground, head in the mud, they still were giving it socks. They were not going to go down easy, and they didn't go down easy. But go down they did. In the aftermath, it became very, very obvious that the two men had been planning this for absolute months. They were extremely well prepared.
Wow.
They not only had axes and improvised knives, they had fake IDs, uniforms, hats they had stolen and been tucking away for months in the hospital. They'd simply been biding their time. And Thomas was seen as like the mastermind of this entire event. And speaking of Thomas, when they discovered that they had all these items with them and were super well prepared to make a prison break, well, the police were shocked at that. They were even more shocked when they were searching Thomas, and in his pocket, they found an ear. When he'd been back at the hospital and the two men were defenseless on the floor, the other inmate, he had sliced off his ear, kept it as a trophy. When he didn't want anybody to hear about their escape, he took that literally. Robert and Thomas would appear in court, and in a landmark case, they would be ordered to serve the rest of their lives in prisons. Federal prisons. Though the ruling wouldn't last more on that in a bit, at the time, this was the harshest penalty, served ever. Now you think with all of that carnage, him going into a school with a shotgun and then having this insane prison break, that would be the last time you'd hear of Robert Mone? Not quite. Just wait, there's more. 2 years after the chaotic and murderous rampage,
ShamWowed us. Holy shit.
The name Robert Mone would be, once again, all over the front pages of Scottish newspapers.
Oh, fuck.
Though on this occasion there would be a slight twist in the tale. On the 29th of December 1978, no one had heard from Agnes Wow, the 78-year-old great-aunt of Robert Francis Mone. No one had heard from her in a while. So in her hometown of Dundee, the police began searching for her. And it was weird from the start. Her front door, the front door to her apartment, wide open. The lights were all on, and her gas fireplace, it was lit and roared. And so the first place the police searched was her own building. They knocked on all the other apartments in here, and then they went downstairs, knocked on the apartment that was directly below Agnes's, knocking to no answer to this apartment either. Being unable to contact the occupier, 70-year-old Jane Simpson, officers forced their way inside. And inside they found both Agnes and Jane brutalized. Bloodied, bruised. They looked like they had been horrifically beaten to death and then strangled. They still had pantyhose around their necks. Searching then the rest of the property, they made another horrific discovery. There was a third woman in the back bedroom.
What the fuck?
She would later be identified as 29-year-old Catherine Miller, and she was in the very same state as the other two. All three women had been dead for several days. Catherine had been married for just 2 weeks, and her husband reported her missing after they'd been married for only 1 week, and now he was identifying her body. Dundee authorities then quickly began one of the biggest manhunts in local history in this part. The killer was even given the name the Grey Memorial Strangler. They were searching everywhere for clues as to who could have done this right around Christmas time.
Catchy, but too long of a name. Too long. It just... Yeah. Yeah.
Now, there was a medical examination of the three bodies, and the coroner noted that all three women showed signs of being hit by someone wearing a large and distinctive ring. The ring was so distinctive and the marks on their bodies so distinctive that they could get a clear image of exactly what this ring would have looked like. So the police, they just needed to find the man wearing it. Detectives questioned anyone, as you can imagine, with even the slightest connection to any of the victims, going to every single person. And who would have a slight connection to one of the victims? Well, relative of Agnes Wow, Robert Mone. Now, though, this wasn't the Robert Francis Mone who was in prison at the time. It was Robert Francis Mone's dad, Robert Francis Mone Sr. Robert the Elder was better known as Sonny, and known he certainly was. Sonny Mone had a bit of a reputation, kind of around town. He had made a reputation long before his son Robert Francis Mone became, a notorious cop killer. Sonny Mone was known for being a drunk and, what's the word? Complete piece of shit. He was hated by pretty much everybody he ever met. And in the weeks leading up to the murders of Agnes Wow, Jane Simpson.
That is a hell of a thing to be known for. I mean, he kind of has, I'm a piece of shit face, you know what I mean? Oh. Like he smells stinky farts, just. Kind of pull that neck in and get that little wrinkle going. Ebenezer Scrooge looking motherfucker.
Simpson and Catherine Miller. Sonny had been heard boasting in the local pubs in Dundee about his intentions to outdo his son. Sonny was so proud of his son's reputation as the Carstairs killer, and he was like enjoying all this, notoriety that it brought him. He was only too happy about it. He was like, yeah, my son is a mad killer. Yeah, it's great. Sonny Mone also had this big reputation for showing off his own tattoos. He had IHS tattooed across his chest, which stood for "in his service." The "his" being the devil. We call that hardcore. It's pretty cringy. But another tattoo he also had was on his TNT, because it's explosive, because it never works when you need it to.
Big things come in small packages.
When he was called in for questioning, Robert Sr. claimed he had been at that apartment, at Jane Simpson's apartment, drinking with Jane and Catherine, drinking there with another guy named Stuart Hutton, but at one point he had to go and get more booze and didn't know anything after that. So if something happened, he wasn't there. However, when detectives went to interview the alleged other guy there, Stuart Hutton, Stuart would say, no, I was the one who went to get the booze. And in fact, I ended up going to a gambling, a bookies, and I actually never went back. Stuart Hutton never went back because he knew how volatile a drunk Sonny Mone could be. Police were able to confirm that Stuart had been at the betting shop, and so we're on Sonny Mone like flies on shite. Robert Sr. was interviewed for days and days on end. He never admitted anything, but he never denied doing it either, because remember, he was pretty chuffed about getting all this attention. He thought he was pretty cool. Hardcore. At one point, he even told an officer, I put me in, coach, put me in prison. Because, he wanted to be there he didn't want his son getting all the hard man attention. During interviews, though, the police noticed Robert was not wearing a ring. But when asking around, he did have one. A large silver ring with a jade stone set inside of it. Ironically enough, it was Robert Francis Mone who had bought his dad that very ring right before he walked into a school with a shotgun.
Wow.
On the 18th of January, 1978, the arrest warrant was issued, and Robert Sr. was arrested that same afternoon. In the ultimate irony, Robert was wearing the ring the police had been searching high and low for at the time of the arrest. Trial did not go well for Sonny Mone, although he's probably only too happy about that. He was condemned to life in prison with a minimum of 15 years, but he was not too happy about it. He didn't get to go to the same prison as his son, so poo-poo. In 1983, only 3.5 years after Sonny Mone was sent away, he did actually get out of prison. Only it also turned out to be a life sentence after all. A fellow inmate, Anthony Curry, hadn't taken kindly to Robert's constant boasting of killing 3 women, and had decided he'd quite like Robert to shut up and be dead. Robert Sr. was stabbed to death in prison, butchered, I guess is the better way of putting it, by Anthony Curry. 2 knives. He went hog wild on Sonny Mone. Couldn't have happened to a better person. When questioned about this, Anthony Curry would say that Robert Sonny Mone was, quote, the most obnoxious person in the country.
Wow.
In 2002, due to the European Human Rights Act making whole life sentences without parole illegal, Robert and Thomas's sentences were reduced to life with the possibility of parole. In 2007, Robert Francis was given day release. He was out for the day in like this picturesque town in the Scottish Highlands. The local folk were none too happy about that at all. Later, Robert got into a fight with another inmate, which just cut any chances he would ever have of getting paroled. And that brings us to the end of the story of Robert Mone. Hopefully, the name Robert Mone is a story we won't be hearing about again. Sorry to any other Robert Mones out there. I'm sure you're fine. Just, don't be scaring anybody. Thomas, despite having killed more people than Mone, actually did win his release. He served his years in a much quieter fashion than his former partner in crime. Robert is still banged up. Nowadays, he spends his time in prison, and being 75 years old, it looks like that life sentence will turn out to be just that.
Wow.
And so ends the story, the batshit story of the Robert Mones. Thank you so much for watching. It really does mean.
That's fucking crazy. I really enjoyed today's story. Thank you so much for the suggestion. All right. If y'all enjoyed today's story as much as I did, please go down there, hit the thumbs up. And while you're down there, go ahead on over, hit that subscribe button. Become part of the Bill 5000 Nation. We do some crazy shit here, bruh. As always, be good to one another. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye. You can't even say like father like son. It'd be more like son like father. He's just trying to imitate his boy. I mean, don't get me wrong, he's a piece of shit, but his boy did worse things. Man, don't ever try to aspire to be something you're not. Just be the drunken shitball you was. You know what I mean? You didn't have to go above and beyond. That wasn't necessary. Nah.